This is the Redevelopment Authority Citizens Committee. Is now 5:30 and we are ready to begin. This is November 2nd, by the way. Tamara, could we have a roll call, please?
Chair Hanneman,
Here.
Vice Chair Cardinal,
Here on WebEx.
Member Barrett, Member Bowden, Member Lopez,
Here.
Member Smith, Member Bolentini-Wolf.
Here via WebEx.
Thank you. A quorum's present.
Great, we have a full house tonight. Thank you. The public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Carson City Redevelopment Citizens Authority, including any matter that is not specifically included in the agenda on this item. Is there any public comment? There will probably be other opportunities. Shall we take that public comment at the time that we discuss that then? Okay. Why don't, if you don't mind waiting, sir? Okay, because then we'll take it right under the order, and that's coming right after the approval of minutes. Okay? All right, so for possible action, the approval of minutes of August 3rd, 2020. If there are no corrections or additions, I will entertain a motion to accept. All in favor?
Aye.
This is Court. I abstained since I was not there.
Okay. All right, then the minutes have been approved. The next item is for possible action, discussion and regarding possible recommendations to the Redevelopment Authority concerning the redevelopment discretionary funds tentative budget allocations for fiscal year 2021 and 2022. Lee, will you take us through this and then we'll begin that?
Good, thank you. Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director. I will go through this item a bit before discussion, give you some background. And this is on the agenda for possible action, although there's no action required. So just a little bit about timing. We have this on the agenda to discuss status of current projects and looking at possible projects for this fiscal year that you could take action on, but not necessarily required tonight, and also to start discussions for the budget for next year. And it's at your February meeting that you routinely make the recommendations to the redevelopment authority for next year's budget. So this is kind of in the process, a point where you can discuss, send us away with some other recommendations to get more information if you'd like on projects. And, but again, for possible action, if you have any immediate recommendations for the redevelopment authority for funding. So what I'd like to do is kind of using attachment 2 in your packet, which is this year's current project budget and capital improvement projects. And then also it gets into the discussion of some possible projects for this year and next year. And it's the one that's up on the screen in front of you. I'm going to use this to kind of go through a little bit of background. And what's up on the screen there is our 5-year allocation draft budget projections for future years to fund projects with we're currently in FY 2021 now. So going down that column, those projects that are in yellow on the screen are projects that have been funded and the expenditures authorized. Just reminding that with redevelopment, it's not just a matter of getting the funding in the budget. You actually have to also take a separate action to authorize expenditures, and those expenditures have been authorized, which includes downtown sidewalk projects, and some of the other routine ones. I would note, going down there, the first blank spot we have is the 3rd Street parking lot rehabilitation project for $240,000. That's actually on the board agenda for this Thursday to authorize the expenditure. That's something that was before the RAC last, if not earlier this year, maybe even last year. But it was already approved by RAC for this fiscal year, the Citizens Committee for this fiscal year. Right below that is downtown shade structure design. That is not something that came before RAC, but was also a result of the 3rd Street discussion. If you do recall, as part of that, the Citizens Committee did not recommend a shade structure as part of the parking lot, and indeed, that's not part of that funding for the parking lot, but the board wanted Public Works to do design and bring concepts back to the board to look at possible other locations for the shade structure, so that's why that funding's there. And I will later discuss the McFadden Plaza shade structure as I get down further. So just going down through the budget too, William Street Corridor project was initially funded in the budget to start design work this year because South Carson Street is still going, and just the timing-wise, because this is a big public works project, that is pushed out a year, so that design would occur in FY 2022. So that's the $85,000 there. So that frees up that much undesignated funding for this year. Similarly, below that, the Fuji Park grandstands, that's contingent upon the master plan that they've been working on this year, the Parks and Rec Department has been working on this year, which has been delayed largely in part because of COVID, and it's still under review, but as a project, the funding's not going to be necessary until FY 22, so that, again, pushes it to next year, frees up some undesignated for this year. And I should also note that the undesignated number, and I note this in the staff report, but I'll say it, you can see after all this shuffling around and adding projects, the undesignated remaining for approved projects is, I think from attachment 1, is almost $500,000, and that's the result of reshuffling those. It's project savings from past projects that have been completed, plus the undesignated in the budget to start with. However, that number is with a big caveat that it's just what it is an April 2020 number plus savings from prior projects. The finance department is in the process of going through the auditing and has not gone through augmentations yet, so that number could be, it will certainly be different. It won't be exactly the same, but if the past is any example, it would likely be actually a little bit more than that, but that is an estimate only based on what we know now, and we'll have the actual number for you in February. But it shows, certainly because of the project savings from prior years that are listed in your staff report, there is certainly undesignated funds in this year's budget that could be used. Going through this year, continuing with this year's budget, we had the Carson Historic Trail Markers for $20,000. That's nearly completed. It's in progress, but nearly completed. And then we're reserving $25,000 for the South Carson landscape maintenance at the completion of that project just for this year, after which the Neighborhood Improvement District will be formed for that maintenance. So that covers the status of projects currently for this year. Are there any questions on those before I move on, or other past projects?
Does anybody have any questions at all? I have a question about the Neighborhood Improvement District in the south. Why, in area, well, that's area 2 down there?
Yeah.
In area 1, everybody is being charged for that. Is this just sort of a stopgap until you get that improvement district going, or?
Yes, this $25,000 is the stopgap till the fiscal year starts in January, on July 1st, 2021. Then it will be funded through the Neighborhood Improvement District.
And the businesses are aware of this?
Yeah,
coming?
there's been meetings, and it was delayed a year, and we're going to get back into the process pretty soon with Public Works to get that adopted, but there's already been meetings about it. So continuing on, and as a result, as I said, of shifting a couple of projects into the following year and some cost savings, there's some funding that could possibly be used this year. And then, of course, looking at the graphic that's up there now, even if that was the right number, and there was approximately $400,000 in undesignated funds, whatever's not used would be rolled forward into next year. So if you kind of look at FY21 and 22, what you really are looking at is the total undesignated to work with over the next 2 years, which is actually, yeah, and that's, sorry, the one I have. Let me go to a different one here real quick. So these numbers, let's see. There we go. There's those numbers. Here's roughly where we stand. So those numbers with the project savings this year and next year's estimated undesignated of about $500,000, those combined are what is available over the remainder of this year and next year in undesignated funds to allocate towards projects. So, continuing down the list, the first one on there, and that's discussed in the staff report, is the 4th Street Temporary Plaza. This is a concept that the Chamber of Commerce has been working with the property owner. I pulled up Google Street View here to kind of show where this is. It's the corner of South Carson Street and South 4th Street. It's right across the street from the legislative building there. They got the crosswalk. And this was the subject of a redevelopment project years ago that put some benches there and did some minimal improvements. and, and potted planters that have since gone, where the trees have since died and gone away. But I think, Chair Hanneman, would you like to kind of go over what the thoughts were with this?
Sure. The reason that the chamber is interested in doing some improvement, not a lot, because it is private property, on this particular corner, it is the only piece of the downtown puzzle at the moment that still looks very unfinished. And not at, I mean, that whole block before the Bank Saloon came in, I mean, it was just awful. So we have been in contact with the tenants, and the tenants have agreed that as long as they can use the surface area for parking, because they use that especially during the legislature, they would allow the city or whomever to put in screening to make that look a whole lot better. And you have three concepts in your packets. And it's just I think, probably a very important improvement project so that the rest of the city, so this lot will look like the rest of the city.
Okay, thank you. Why don't I, there's just a few more projects to go through. Why don't I summarize what's on here, and then we'll come back to discussion if that's okay. Next one on the list there is South Carson Street holiday decorations for $20,000. This is something that could be funded this year. We're not sure that they could actually get the purchase done and installed in time for the holidays this year. But basically, this is with the new South Carson Street opening. And this would cover the cost of decorations between Fifth Street and the Stewart Street roundabout to match what's been done every year in the downtown area with the street lights and things wrapped with lights and such. So that's a possible thing to beautify the district and to help for redevelopment to help pay for. The next item on there is bike racks, and we've had a couple requests for new bike racks, and in addition to that, this would help pay for $10,000, help pay for installation of bike racks whenever somebody wanted one in the redevelopment district. Like I said, we've had a couple requests for those. It would also provide for backups for when the existing bike racks become damaged. The V&T Roundhouse Arch Conceptual Plan. So this is something that's been talked about for a long time as well, which is that the city, for those who don't know, the city has the blocks from one of the arches at the old roundhouse, the old V&T Roundhouse from the Washington Street vicinity. And they've been saved with the idea that someday they'd be put up somewhere as a monument, as a historical marker for the area. And so, but a location hasn't been identified yet, and it needs to be somewhere where the people can have access to it, come up to it. Probably want the Historic Resource Commission involved to talk about some of the interpretive stuff that would go along with that. But Public Works has suggested allocation of $20,000 to have a consultant team have a public participation series and come up with possible locations and conceptual designs for it. That would also help determine and to come up with a cost estimate for the actual structure itself. That would be a future project. Continuing down with a couple more new things, I do want to mention McFadden Plaza shade structure. So that goes back to the discussion on the 3rd Street parking lot that started with whether or not to have a shade structure there to accommodate events. The Board of Supervisors directed city staff to do the design, to go hire consultants to evaluate other locations, which included McFadden Plaza, the Brewery Arts Center, and when it went back to the board and they looked at the alternatives, the direction was to bring to bring the McFadden Plaza alternatives to the Citizens Committee for a recommendation. It's plugged in with a draft number in the next year's budget, so there's nothing that needs a decision today on this. It's not a project, at this point with the design and construction, it wouldn't get done till next fiscal year, so it doesn't need to be funded till then. And it's also an item that I would suggest we've been in a little bit communication with the adjacent property owners there. They want some time to look at it, so it's probably something we'll take up in February in more detail. A couple other things on the list. Below that is the Appian Way signalized intersection. This is something suggested by Public Works to consider. I think in the staff report I have the total cost. It suggested $100,000 to help with that, which is over $1 million project. It ties into the traffic study that was completed. It provides improvements to South Carson Street in redevelopment area number 2 in conformance with the goals and policies of that area plan. It's also kind of, I would just say, an opportunity in the next fiscal year to provide some funding to that area, which is area number 2, after a lot of other improvements and funding has been directed towards the downtown. So it's kind of a way to be able to allocate some funding to that project area and help the commercial properties down in that vicinity. Next item is downtown power lines undergrounding for $100,000. I'll note at this point that Dan Stuckey is here from Public Works, the city engineer, to answer any questions you have on any of these, but this is kind of also a plug-in number, and actually by February, we're hoping to have an idea of whether this funding is actually needed or not to enhance the undergrounding project that's already budgeted and paid for $100,000 from redevelopment. But if it turns out that the cost was higher than estimated, however, on the other hand, there's a good chance that Public Works is going to be able to get more grant money from NV Energy, so that might not be necessary at all. But if you have any questions on that, like I said, Dan's, or any other things, Dan's here. But right now, that's just kind of a plug-in number to look at the numbers for next year. And then finally, to the last item on there that comes up for discussion every time, so I thought I'd put it in there, and it's a pet discussion of Supervisor Barrett is downtown sidewalk and landscape maintenance. And not just because he brings it up every time, but we're actually continuing to add landscaping and add areas that aren't funded by the Downtown Neighborhood Improvement District, because that was established specifically for those improvements that were part of that project. And as we keep adding other sidewalk projects and landscaping, we have not, this, I would say, the city has not identified additional funding to pay for that maintenance. So I think, again, there's an opportunity ongoing to put some additional funding to go towards that. So that concludes the list that we have for now. The other purpose of this meeting is to discuss anything else you might have and take questions.
Okay, I think we do have someone wanting to speak on behalf of one of the items. So the public is welcome to weigh in right now. If you could give us your name and your business and tell us about McFadden Plaza.
My name's Kelly Dodge. I'm a sound guy here in Carson City. I've done many events at McFadden Plaza. I want to talk about ways the facility can be improved from an event perspective. It has a couple problems. First of all, the roof doesn't cover the stage. There's a significant amount of the stage that sticks out beyond the roof. The roof doesn't have any way to hang stuff from it, so you can't mount speakers or lights or anything from the roof. And the lighting that's currently on the roof is inappropriate at best, and it's basically okay work lights, but not appropriate for an event of any kind. Also, with the way that the facility sits, when the sun sets in the west, there's a huge amount of sun that just bakes the stage. And I've seen all kinds of weird pop-up tent ideas and different things. It would be nice if we could put some kind of a shade structure on the west side of the stage permanently so that the stage has shade in the afternoon when most events happen there. And I think any of those or all of those would be pretty important if significant events want to be run there that are done professionally and then that look good. We need to get the speakers off the ground and stuff like that, but we can't. And we need to get the performers in the stage and in the shade, and we can't. So those are my comments.
So Kelly, so you're talking about the shade structure, which is not the shade structure in our packet. You're
I
talking
would
about something specifically for the stage.
I would expect that the shade package is something that would be put over where the audience would sit. For an event, even if you look at this place like here, people stand on the front of the stage. They need lighting and speakers in front of them to light their faces, and so that the speakers need to be in front of the performer so that it doesn't feed back. With McFadden Plaza, the roof is so far back, the front edge of the roof is so far back from the front of the stage that it can't be used to either light the people in the front or hang speakers from. So that roof, in my opinion, should be extended 3, 5, 7 feet in front of the stage, and the front edge of the stage. It should overhang so that lights could be pointed at people's faces, and there should be ways that lights and speakers can be mounted on that roof so that the lights can be facing the people and the speakers can be off the ground and facing the crowd.
No, I agree with you. It's very cumbersome to hold any event on that stage. So anybody like to weigh in on this?
Yeah, Kelly, just a question for you. Of course, you know, you're in sound and you know that quite well. So what are your thoughts? I hear you what you were saying. It needs to extend beyond the end of the stage because you got all that concrete out there. And you're right, the sun beams down on the entertainers. Are you talking about maybe coming from the part where it stops, maybe some kind of extension or something over that? Or what are your thoughts? What do you have in mind to hopefully curtail that problem or concern?
I'm not an engineer. I know that the roof currently is some kind of a cantilever design, and I know that extending a cantilever design creates a lot more force out there. So I don't know, but I would think even having posts that hold up the front edge of the roof would be better than not having the roof extended over the stage. So take what's there and extend it out, whatever it is, 10, 15 feet to get past the front of the stage, even if you have to put front supports in it. And then if you have front supports, then you could add a side support on the west side and use that as a frame for a shade structure of some kind, put some kind of a sail or some kind of a blow-through canvas or something that would cover the sun to the west.
Okay, thank you.
Kelly or Lee, perhaps this is one of the items that we could study further and have a stage engineer look at and maybe fund the study. What is your take on this?
Yeah, with that direction, we could get with Public Works and come up with the proposal to include for next year's budget, I think.
Dan, you're here. Do you want to weigh in? Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, Dan Stuckey, Deputy Public Works Director for the record. Yeah, no, I think Kelly as well as Lee hit it right on the head. There's some structural things that you'd want to look at, whether extending the stage or even just doing some posts. And it's something we could absolutely look at. and kind of do analysis, kind of like what we did with the shade structure alternatives to bring back to see feasibility of it and how it would look.
Okay, you have a question?
No, I just wanted to make the comment that as I recall, when Plaza was planned and built, at that time on the stage, some of the people who are in the performing arts had a lot of thoughts about the size and, the configurations. So if we go forward with this, I just recommend that we bring people in the loop who will be using it to have many thoughts come from people who will use it as a stage. My recollection is that the Boogleys were involved at that point and some others. So I'm sure Lee remembers this, so we probably should check in with everybody who sees that as an opportunity to perform on that stage. Thank you.
And I think one of the people that we have to consult with would be the BAC and Kelly Dodge as well. So he should be on that committee, since he brought it up. While we have your attention here, let's talk a minute, because we are on McFadden Plaza, about the proposed shade structure, because I have some questions on that. So can you give me a little bit of background on what precipitated all this?
Yeah, so again, Dan Stuckey, Deputy Public Works Director for the record. So as Lee mentioned, the board wanted us to look at some various locations downtown, look at some concepts. We prepared, I believe, 2 alternatives for each of the 3 locations: 3rd Street parking lot, McFadden Plaza, and the Brewery Arts Center. When we went back this last time, the board kind of narrowed in on that McFadden Plaza alternative. So we looked at a number of different options for city-owned areas such as McFadden Plaza. We didn't want to do any shade sale type structures. So that's why you see in your packet the concept of kind of the trellis style there, something more permanent that wouldn't require put up and take down for winter months and those types of things, and be a little more long-term. So we looked at a couple different alternatives there, but the 2 that are presented in your packets were kind of the ones that were finally settled on. And you'll notice that really they're both the trellis style. What's difference between the option 1 and option 2 alternatives that were presented at the board is option 2 runs the entire, or I can't remember which one. There's one option that runs the entire span of the plaza, and then one option that's kind of half of it. And the reason is there's a little tighter corridor when you come in from the Carson Street side because of the Fox, their patio area kind of projects out into that area, creates a little more narrow of an environment or a corridor there. We wanted to, there was some discussion as far as if you had a shade structure there, would kind of restrict the viewway for the pedestrians and people coming through there. So that's why that second option, where it's half of the plaza, just in the portion where it opens up near the stage area, is where that was proposed. Is that what you're looking for?
I think so. I just remember originally the reason that we even brought this up was for shade structure for the farmer's market. And then all of a sudden we're at other places. And as you know, I mean, RAC, as you said, had said, no, we don't really need this. The farmers markets can bring their tents or whatever. And I have not really talked, and I understand nobody's really talked to the Low Piccolos about whether or not they want it. And they own most, I know that we own the street portion of it as a city. I presume that still is in play. But they own the whole area, on each side there, the buildings. And in looking at this, some of the concerns that I had, first of all, the trees there are probably more robust than any of them downtown. I don't know whether the downtown trees are getting water or not, but those trees at McFadden are really growing well. And they will, in the next 4 or 5 years, really be beautiful. To have this shade structure, I think it's a small plaza to begin with. And what you're doing is like taking a big room and putting lots of furniture in it. And all of a sudden, it's going to be really small. part of the reason that we had the water feature was because of the sun and the whole bit. I know we have a lot of sun here. The other concern I had was in the winter. Who's going to maintain to make sure that that's not iced up? That's another thing that I don't, that could very well be a problem unless we put a little ice skating rink under it. So that could be, one of the issues. But I was just really curious why. I mean, a lot of on the north side is already shaded. So you've got, for the people who don't want to be in the sun, it's shaded. And then one of the things that's so beautiful right now about McFadden is all the different colored umbrellas. It makes you just want to stop and be there. And I'm not sure that this kind of a shade structure would really add to the ambiance, but I'll let my cohorts here weigh in. Those are just some of the suggestions or some of the concerns that I had.
Hey, Ronnie, it's Court.
Yes.
Can you guys hear
Court.
me?
Yes.
So a couple things. I agree with a lot of what's being said right now. I'd like to start, and I kind of like to go in chronological order, and start with the 3rd Street parking lot rehabilitation and the shade structure down there. If I recall correctly, our final meeting with regards to that was, is it a parking lot or is it a flea market location or farmer's market location? And I believe that we decided, it's not going to be a jack of all trades. And we came to the conclusion it was going to be more of a parking lot than a farmer's market. If it continues to be a farmer's market, I brought up last time that putting any kind of shade structure in there is going to cause issues because you have people with mobile trucks doing coffee and cheese and various things. You've got tents of various sizes. So you're going to run into problems if you put a shade structure in 3rd Street if it's still going to be utilized as a farmer's market in addition to a parking lot. If the farmer's market moves, and we talked about it at the time of potentially moving over to the pavilion, the Marvtex Air Pavilion or something of that nature, which is already shaded, then the shade structure, I believe, probably comes into play for if it's just parking. I don't know where that determination ended up. Lee, maybe you know that. That's number one. Number two is I agree with Ronnie on personally, just me, I don't like these designs at all. I think it breaks up the plaza. It comes down the center. It divides it. I think I am 100% against something like that down there. I agree with Ronnie. It needs to be open. It needs to be fun. The umbrellas make it festive. I'm not a fan of that at all. Just my own personal opinion. But I'd like to kind of know whatever ended up happening with 3rd Street, because it seems like now we're looking at a shade structure, but that's going to be difficult, as I pointed out before, if the farmers market continues to be there.
From what I understand, there is not going to be a shade structure at 3rd Street at all, at the parking area. I think that's a little confusion here when we keep talking 3rd Street. So I guess we haven't talked McFadden plus parking.
Yeah.
So
So-
that is not going to be part of it.
So that was just that $12,600 was just for the design concept, but isn't going to come to fruition.
Well,
Right,
you know what? This came out of the Board of Supervisors, and as you well know, as a committee, we don't have the final authority on almost anything except the facade improvement program. So that came, staff took the direction from the Board of Supervisors, and it has brought it back here, and I think we still don't have any oversight or or recommendation power, other than to say, again, I guess what you're saying, Court, is we don't need it, but it's all ultimately in the hands of the Board of Supervisors. Do I have that correct?
Yeah.
I agree with you, Ronnie. And again, it's here we are as a citizens committee having the cart before the horse, and they go ahead and make decisions and then say, Well, now we're going to bring it before you guys, and it's a moot point at that level.
Now, can I clarify things, please? So the Third Street parking lot is getting funded the parking lot rehabilitation is going forward with no shade structure. The $12,600 that was directed for design, it included kind of conceptual design for them to look at for the Third Street parking lot, but and as well as the other locations. But the clear decision that's been made is that the shade structure is not going to be in the Third Street parking lot. That rehabilitation project is going forward. What's going to be considered, and the concept of a shade structure at the Brewery Arts Center funded by the city has gone away. And the only thing to consider is if there should be the shade structure in McFadden Plaza. So, and that's the discussion that the Board of Supervisors has asked us to bring to you for a recommendation.
Well, I will tell you, Lee, I think it's really difficult to make a recommendation without knowing what the Low Piccolos feel.
I'm not asking, let me finish. You don't have to make a recommendation today. It's put in the budget for next year. We'll bring back, and you're not going to get an argument from either of city staff sitting here that the plaza was designed with trees that will grow up and provide shade. I assume the board members have received comments from people that it's too hot there, we need shade out there, so this is a possible way to address that. I think design-wise, with the landscape design was intended for trees to mature and provide shade in that area. I'd also want to note, going back to the discussion about the stage, that stage was built with input from users, but with also a very limited budget. It wasn't at the time that we had the money to do everything that would have made it a good event space with all those things that were mentioned. So again, I think we'll go back and look at that to see if what that might cost to improve that for your consideration. We appreciate the comments. And I think ultimately a recommendation may go back not to use funding to do a shade structure for the reasons you've recommended, and that's fine. But it's not an imminent expenditure either, so it's something we can take up after La Piccolos have a chance to property owners to weigh in.
Right, and I appreciate that. John, you are a member of the Board of Supervisors. Can you give us a little history on this?
I think I can. I'll go by my memory, which is getting older, and with Lee's help, I will summarize it this way. I don't think that the Board of Supervisors in court, you might want to listen up on this, because I understand how you feel. We had a former member on RAC, Garrett Lapierre, who sometimes felt the same way, that, oh, well, if the board's just going to go make a decision, what are we doing here? We did not so much as, in my view, make a decision as we left things off the table. The decision, basically, from my perspective and from what I consider my fellow board members' perspective, was we didn't want it on 3rd Street, and we didn't want it on a private sector thing like the Brewery Arts Center. We didn't want to spend money there. Stacy, Giome, and I both said we just were heartsick that those trees had to come down at the 3rd Street, but it is what it is in terms of engineers and tree people have said we need to fix this parking lot. And as I recall, Brad Bronkowski said on several occasions that we need to make the same decision we've discussed here at the RAC, which is this a parking lot or is this an event space? And I think pretty much the direction in the mind of the board was it's not an event space, except occasionally, and it's more of a parking lot. So we didn't want to put them up there. We didn't want to put them up at the Brewery Arts Center. But in terms of McFadden Plaza, we left it open for a recommendation from the RAC, or at the point when it comes forward to us, whether there's a recommendation or not, deciding what to do. I don't think anybody is married to the idea of putting up a shade structure. It's just leaving the door open to explore it. I hope that summarizes well. We did not actually make a decision that we were going to put something at McFadden Plaza. We just left the door open. Is that right, Lee?
I think that's a good characterization of it. Yeah, that's how I would say it.
No, and I think I
But
understand.
this court, I was just going to say thank you, both Lee and John, for the clarification on that. It makes a little bit more sense now. Appreciate it.
Okay, yes, and thank you. Does anybody else
This
have
is
any?
Lopez. I have a,
Go ahead.
yes. Ronnie?
Yes, go
Okay,
ahead.
thanks. I think I have a question for Lee. Is the farmer's market actually considering going to the McFadden Plaza, moving over from 3rd Street to the McFadden Plaza if the shade structures were installed there? I was under the impression that they were not interested in that.
No, they would not move over to McFadden Plaza. It's not big enough for the farmer's market.
Right. So it would just be there for the events that already occur on McFadden Plaza, not to move the farmer's market over,
Correct.
correct? All right. And I do have to add to what Kelly said. I work with Kelly a lot. He is a wonderful sound guy. And if we're going to invest more money into the McFadden Plaza, that stage needs to be a usable space. So I think his recommendations are very worthwhile that we look into. It's a great location, but it's not quite a usable space from a performing arts standpoint at this point.
Thank you, and I think earlier we said that we would like to bring it to the Board of Supervisors for maybe funding a study or whatever for you, for your engineering, Dan. So I think it goes back to them as a recommendation from this committee that, and nothing has really been said at the moment about putting more money into McFadden Plaza. It's just that the shade structure was brought forth. And I think that we need to get more input on this before we can even really discuss it. So we'll have to get more information, Lee, before February.
Comment. This is Aaron West.
Hi, Aaron.
Would now be an appropriate time to talk? Are you wrapping up your conversation on McFadden Plaza? Can we
We
jump to something
certainly
else you
are.
discussed
Are
previously?
we going to talk about 4th Street?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I'd love to just bring it. I thought you did a good job kind of bringing folks up to speed, but I just wanted to chime in. So again, for the record, Aaron West, CEO of the Nevada Builders Alliance, and obviously we have a pretty sizable investment now in that block there at 4th, 5th, and Carson Curry, and so we were brought into the conversation with the tenants, basically all of the folks that were currently utilizing the parcel, and the owners, I think, are so far been very agreeable in terms of whenever we've needed something from them. So I think that they're willing to work with us. The challenge becomes they're also not really in a position right now to put a bunch of money into the property. They just acquired the remaining share of it recently, and so I think they're kind of seeing what that looks like, and I think ultimately they're probably just looking to sell the property. So the idea became, can we do something now that, obviously the Bank Saloon and the associated parking area has done a pretty substantial improvement to a good chunk of the block. And then with what was done with the downtown streetscape project and with what's already under design for Curry Street, that area is going to really look, pretty impressive. And we do have a legislative session coming up. And I know that, just as somebody who spent almost 20 years in the legislative building and was kind of wondering, what was going on across the street. And I think there might be an opportunity there. I know I've certainly heard comments from a lot of folks that, we could definitely put out a better facade for our downtown core, and especially that area directly across from the legislative building. So I think, I really appreciate Loomis. We went to them and said, hey, we believe you have some existing mapping. Could you help us out? And they came up with some great concepts and even some, cost estimates. And so with the idea that, we could honestly, relatively little money and end up with a product that really cleans up that area and is also temporary in nature, so that if something does happen with the property, then that could be taken down and utilized by the city somewhere else, because it, still very attractive materials. So that'd be my 2 cents.
And that's a good 2 cents. Thank you, Aaron. I didn't realize that you were here. Great public comment. We have a question here. Go ahead.
Hello, Aaron. This is Board Member Mike Smith. So, Aaron, when can we anticipate that beautiful sign that's going to go up for the Bank Saloon?
If you haven't been by recently, the goal was to get that up before Nevada Day, and we barely got that up on Friday.
Oh.
Friday morning. So the new hanging Bank Saloon logo sign is officially lit and ready to go.
Well, thank you. When I leave this meeting, I must drive by. Thanks, Aaron.
You bet.
Don't just drive by, have a drink. So, and Aaron, I echo your thanks to Loomis Associates. They did this on the fly for us. And in talking with the owners and the tenants, they like the option 1 in your packet, which comes in roughly at about $65,000. And as Aaron said, this is something that can be moved as needed if we ever needed to block up another area. I'm not sure when this will be sold, this parcel. It's been like this for over 20 years, so maybe it would be good fortune if we do put this up, and maybe they will get it. So there was never any thought that they would have to invest in this, because I know that they wouldn't want to. I am looking at this more as even though it's not, I'm looking more at this as a facade improvement without being the building itself. So if we had to take this out of the facade improvement program, we possibly could do that, because it is really a facade improvement.
And Ronnie, if I might, or Madam Chair, if I might, Aaron West for the record again, I do want to give credit to the owners that when we were finishing up the front of our building, I pointed out to the tenants that the front of their building was starting to look a little rough, and it'd be a great opportunity to get that cleaned up. And the owners of the property didn't balk at all at stepping up and spending a little money to, clean that up and get it repainted. And so I want to go on the record that they've already, made some contributions down there to clean up what they have. I just don't think it's in their best interest at this point to, make a large commitment without knowing what some future buyer might want to do with the property.
Exactly, and if I didn't convey that well, I'm sorry. But yes, they did a good job with the repainting. So is there any discussion on this at all? We might be able to, Lee, take some action on this tonight.
Yes, and after, the way this agenda title reads, it is for possible action to make for the Citizens Committee to make recommendations regarding the budget and funding allocations. So in discussions with Dan Yu previously, it was determined that you could make recommendations to the Redevelopment Authority on funding, on expenditures for this year if you chose to take that action today. I typically try to have these agenda items separate so that you are focused on a specific expenditure, but it's within it's within your authority to make recommendations on the budget to the redevelopment authority. They have the final decision on the expenditure, so you could make recommendations on some of these tonight.
I think one of the things right now is the time limit. If we're trying to get this done before the legislature comes in on February 1st. Dan, you are an engineer. Looking at this, I'm not an engineer at all, but it looks like this could be something that could be done rather quickly, except for the plantings, of course. But I do know that the tenants there have received a lot of comments on how terrible that block looks. So we would like to put our best foot forward and complete just that one little puzzle piece, that one little piece that needs to be done. So what is your input on this?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked at it in a ton of detail yet, but from what I'm seeing in the packet, I mean, it doesn't seem like it. I mean, the biggest thing is like the irrigation, running that out, but it's right there and available. And then I think most of these are just prefab type, you just would purchase the planters and have them arrive and put in some landscaping and get irrigation to it, and you can be ready to go. So I don't think it should take too much time.
Aaron, are you still there?
Yeah, and maybe I could clarify on that. I believe, based on the conversation, we were anticipating annuals in the planters that could just be watered under the existing city contract to water the flower pots that hang from the streetlights. So we wouldn't even have the expense of landscape irrigation.
Well, aren't you a wealth of information? Thank you. That sounds, annuals are beautiful. I mean, right now, we could have whatever's in bloom right now. All right, any input from any of you? Not a blooming thing. Okay, so I would like to entertain a motion, perhaps, it's not in your packet, that we go forth with this, with the option one, which is what I understand that the tenants and the owners would accept for us to be on their property or just outside of their property. I think it's within the, probably the, what do they call it? The line where it's on our side or the city side. So, to begin this so that this can be put on the agenda for the Board of Supervisors at one of their recent, pretty future meetings. So does anybody want to make a motion or on this or?
Well, I'm not going to make it as a member of the Board of Supervisors, so I'll just wait.
Okay, Court, you want to take this forth?
All right, I'll give it a shot here. So we're okay. I make a so let me think. I make a motion that we move forward with the concept of the beautification of the area surrounding the property on the 4th Street Temporary Plaza to the board for further discussion and consideration.
Lee, does that sound good to you?
Yeah, we'll bring it forward for the, oh, you gotta, I don't want to
So
interrupt. Do you have a
it's,
second on the motion?
we need a second on this, please.
Well, even though I am a board member, I'm also a member here, I will second it.
Okay, all in favor of sending this over to the Board of Supervisors for consideration for funding? Please. Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, you were just saying aye? Okay. All right, so any further discussion on this? If not, then please, Lee, do bring this forth.
Okay. Okay, we're past that discussion. So we were just having a discussion here on, and on the topic of downtown beautification. I was trying to get from Mr. Stuckey if we could get the holiday decorations purchased this year, if they could get the funding this year, and if that's something the RAC would entertain. That might be another item for which they could start the process now and possibly get decorations up for this holiday season in beginning of December.
Okay, I have
Lee,
some input on that for a moment, and that is, what about if we just, those holiday decorations have been up there forever. Why not just do brand-new ones? I know it's going to be more than the 20,000 or whatever you have here. The poles are the poles, but I mean the decoration across the street. Some of it is looking rather tattered, so we do have the extra funding, and it goes back on your shoulders, Dan, if the committee does agree that it would be more funding, but it is there and it's a one-time charge. So what would you think about that?
So you're talking throughout the whole corridor, so basically from William Street south on Carson, all the Christmas decorations or holiday decorations that we've had for, I think 15 or 20 plus years, I want to say at least some of them are just replaced.
Yes, I'm talking from Fifth Street down to, well, I'm sorry, from William Street down to the roundabout, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's, I think, a great idea. I do have a little concerns about getting that ordered and installed in time. I mean, we're getting here pretty close to when they want to start getting those up. So that's my only hesitation. I just don't have an idea off. I can find out, but as far as the lead time that you need from purchase to install, but I think it's a great idea. I just hesitant that it might not happen for this holiday season.
Well, Silver and Snowflakes is going to start, or we're trying to put something together for December 4th. So I doubt that that's 3 weeks, roughly a little over 3 weeks away. Do we need it for this year, or can we just do it really well next year?
We can definitely do it really well next year.
I'm sorry, Michael, you want to say something?
Yeah, and to Stan's point here, I think if we can just wait the next year to do it right, as opposed to piecemealing and doing it here and this and that and a few, let's just wait until next year and just really do it first class and do it right.
Does anybody else have any input on this?
I just agree.
Don't you usually start decorations about Thanksgiving weekend? And I agree. I don't think it would give you enough time to get the orders in and get the design set up. I think if we just put them out for this year, but do the order and then have it done really well for 2021.
And I will tell you.
This is Court. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Court.
Well, I was going to say, I agree too. I just had one point of clarification. Is it the one on the list here when it says South Carson Street holiday decorations? Can we define where that starts and stops?
Yeah, that is the line item we're talking about, and the discussion is to not to push that to next year and include any other decorations that need replacing, and that because this would have covered like Fifth Street to Stewart Street was the estimate for that.
Oh, Fifth to Stewart. Okay. Yeah, that was kind of my question: is where does South start and stop on this list here? But I agree with everybody. Do it right. Do it next year. I just didn't know how far south it was going to continue when it says South Car Street landscape.
And I think if we have more time too, we could look at alternatives that go farther south and see what that would involve. We discussed that briefly as well, but in the short period of time, this was kind of the easy part.
Well, I think the downtown is where you really want your decorations. The other is more the business corridor, and you don't usually see that, and the businesses decorate for the most part. But I would like to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that we just do it right next year. It's time to update. We've updated the entire downtown let's update the decorations.
We'll just take staff direction on that, and for February, we'll adjust it and try to come up with a better cost
Staff
estimate.
direction.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to add to that is that the state will not be doing the wowza that they normally do because they don't have staff this year. So Capitol Grounds will be lit, but not to the extent it has been. So that makes it even better for next year, that it's all brand new and beautiful. So, okay, Lee, thank you.
Madam Chair, just one question for Lee before we get off the attachment two. So Lee, on the bike racks, I know it's only 10,000. So how many bike racks are we looking at? And really, do we have that many bikers that's actually going to take advantage of the bike racks?
Yeah, so these are the kind of the lollipop style bike racks that you see downtown,
Sure.
is what we call them. We have about 3 or 4 extras right now, and it's actually down to 2 because some businesses have requested them, and so we've installed a couple in the right of way, and so now we're down to basically 2 on our inventory. And believe it or not, I mean, this won't come as a surprise, but I mean, they get damaged, they get hit by vehicles. So we'd like to have some spares on hand because they do take some time to order and you know the time it takes to come in. So that's the kind of the reasoning. So this would cover, I think, 6 bike racks is what we have here, and they would just be stored over at the Public Works yard until you know the request was there, and we could install them at that time.
Yeah, to reply to Michael's question, I have the feeling that we all know here that there's a contingent of muscle-powered and bikers in this community. I happen to be one of them, but people don't use them all the time, obviously. It's better for better weather. And I have a tendency to ride my bike, it's a mountain bike, away from traffic and not as much downtown. But people do use them. In fact, a lot of people come down for the farmer's market with their bikes. And there are more bikers here than you realize, and you don't see them all the time. But it's not a huge expenditure, and it is utilized. And I think the Complete Streets program that Carson City has been pushing, and a tip of the hat to our late mayor, Complete Streets is a big love of his, and I also agree with it, that it's an effort to encourage bikes as well. That's why we have the bike lanes. So I think it's a good expenditure as long as we don't go whole hog and way above this 10 grand.
I have a question for you on the bikes. First of all, let me put in a request from Mangia Tuto, who's been trying to get this for a while. I hope they will get one because they get a lot of bikers that go there, or bicyclists, cyclists, I guess is the best word. The other thing is on Curry Street, are you going to be putting bike racks there? Has that already been decided?
Yeah, so that project is in design right now with plans to construct next summer. There are, I believe, a couple bike racks, but it's nowhere near the magnitude that you see along the Carson Street corridor. So probably like a quarter of the density, I guess, that you would see is what we're anticipating with the Curry.
Well, just going on to John's comments there, maybe you want to save 3 or 4 of them just for around the parking area if on 3rd Street, if the farmer's market, so that you can have a place for your bike next year. Does anybody have any other, Court or Gina or anybody have any comments on any of these proposed projects?
No, I think I've said everything I've had to comment on tonight.
I think the V&T Roundhouse Arch is exciting that that's finally going to be resurrected. Okay, Lee, do you have anything further that you wish to discuss?
Think we're good, thank you.
All right, then I guess we're coming to the end. So do you have any staff reports and updates on matters relating to RAC?
I don't have any. The next regular meeting would be the first Monday in February. We'll bring back these final recommendations, make the modifications, try to bring back more information on these things. And right now, I have a Monday reserved in December if you need a special meeting, but I don't have any items right now for it.
I don't think we're going to need anything. I mean, tonight, it was just sort of setting a stage. Dan, thank you for being here. Drive safely. Does anybody else have anything that they want to put on the agenda for next time?
I have nothing for the agenda, but I would like to say, since I will be going off the Board of Supervisors and the Redevelopment Authority, as well as this committee, in January, it's been a pleasure serving with you all. I think we've done some good things in the years I've been here. That this is a good committee. Thank you.
All right, and thank you for all your public service, John. It's been a pleasure as well.
Madam Chair. I too
John.
want to echo what John, my term ends January as well, 2021, and I would like to say that I've really enjoyed working with you great colleagues, and I think we've got a lot done in this time, and I know that you will continue to do the great work, so just thank you for the opportunity that I got a chance to work with all you wonderful individuals, so thank you.
All right, then. Thank you as well, Michael. All right, RAC member reports and comments. Does anybody have any reports or comments they would like to make? Hearing none, the only thing that I have to say is, as you know, the RAC does fund the Silver and Snowflake Festival of Lights, and this has been very difficult this year to try to figure out what's going on. So the event will go on December 4th with all the possible COVID mandates that you can imagine. And the sad thing is that the children will not be singing on the Capitol steps, but we have another way that we're going to accomplish this that we hope will be fine without attracting thousands of people that normally come to this event. So I'm not going to tell you what it is. It's a big surprise. So I hope that you will come into downtown Carson City on the night of December 4th and help the restaurants out, and everybody stay safe until January, right? All right, thank you. And any further public comments? Yes?
Kelly Dodge again. Not really on any of your lists, but I would like to see Carson City look at the pavilion. Like my discussion with McFadden Plaza, there's a lot of things that could be improved with the pavilion to make it a place that would hold major events. I think that JT's Corral down in Gardnerville has shown that we can, or in Minden, has shown that there can be large events down here that attract thousands of people. The pavilion is supposed to hold over 3,000 people. It has a roof that allows it to be used on the shoulders of the season where JT's can't. You can use it in April and May, or August, September, October, probably. The problems with it is first of all, the roof sounds horrible. Anybody that walks into that building can hear weird echoes off the roof. That can be fixed. We can hire an acoustics person to recommend ways of fixing the roof so it's acoustically not terrible. And then, like McFadden Plaza, it needs places at the front of the stage and at the rear of the stage that sound and lighting equipment can be hung from. I haven't looked at it recently, but I don't know if the beams line up with the front and back of the stage very well, and what the rating is for how much those can handle, if they can handle thousands of pounds for speakers and lights and all that stuff. And finally, I think the roof has to be extended to cover the entire stage. The back 10 or 15 feet of that is uncovered. And it would be nice if that back wall came down farther so that the crowd isn't looking at the sunset as shows start, because the sun would just shines right through that back wall, right at where your crowd would be seated. So I don't know how you guys put it together, but I would love for us to look at utilizing that as a place where you can have concerts or other kinds of events, instead of now where you really can't. There's no good way to run any kind of professional event in there.
Kelly, I think the step here would be to take this to Parks and Rec. It really, that's not something that we would listen to at the moment without a recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Department. So that has to go to them for study and consideration and the whole bit. So we're just always at the end for the funding, if there is any funding. The other thing too is with JT's, that's a private venture, and they make lots of money on that. So that would be an interesting thing to see how the city could make money off of that, off of this expenditure. So I think
The
that's
city would
very important.
make money because they rent the facility and people show up and rent hotel rooms, they buy gasoline, they eat at restaurants, that's tax income and all that stuff that comes to the city.
Oh, and I understand all of that, but again, the procedure would be to go before the Parks and Recreation Commission, okay?
Okay, I wasn't sure if you guys covered it. I know that
No.
you had some kind of a thing for the pavilion on here for a sign or something, so I thought maybe that was part of redevelopment.
But that came to us from Parks and Rec saying that they need better wayfaring signs.
Okay.
So we looked at their, all of their process, all of their application, and decided, yes, the 10,000 or whatever it was a good expenditure for people to get around the park. So
Okay.
it has to go through Parks and Rec.
Thank you.
Okay, we are ready to adjourn. I will take a motion for this, please.
This court, I move to adjourn.
Okay, second. Okay, we have a couple of seconds. People want to go home. Thank you all, and I'm not going to see you for the holidays. So everybody have a happy holiday, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye. We're now.